nine, eight, seven, six, five, four, three, two, one.
Hi everyone, my name is Aeryn Cagle. I'm an investment associate at the Newchip Accelerator on our investor relations team. Now here at Newchip, we are driven by our belief in entrepreneurs, which is why our accelerator is designed to help them succeed by providing founders with the skills and tools necessary to build, scale, and fund their startups. Now that mission was put into action and propelled by our service-driven military veteran founder, Ryan Raffles. Now, many of the companies joining our cohorts every single month, like Newchip, also have incredibly innovative and passionate veteran founders, which is something that we are exceptionally proud of here. So to highlight that during this demo day and take some time to discuss some of the unique skills that veteran founders can bring to the success of a startup, I've invited JD Messenger and Sherman Williams, who are both graduates of United States military academies, here today to talk about their successful careers and why they think that it's important to invest in veteran entrepreneurs. So JD, Sherman, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me today.
Glad to be here. And we're both Naval Academy graduates, so let's get this straight. Our mission is to beat Army. So sorry about it. We're united in patriotism, but not on the football field.
Understood. So let's start by talking a little bit about your background. So Sherman, you are currently the managing partner of the Academy Investor Network, a virtual platform created for U.S. Service Academy graduates to invest in venture-backed startups through investment syndicates. Can you tell me a little bit more about your background and your journey leading up to your current position?
My background, like JD mentioned, a graduate of the U.S. Naval Academy. I then went on after many years in the Navy as an intelligence officer, went on to go to the University of Chicago Booth for business school. And while there, actually interned at a VC shop in an investment bank, ended up going banking right away after business school because I knew I had a lot to learn, had to do some catch up. So did banking for approximately 6 years. But while as a banker, I started investing in startups and advising and assisting startups while as an investment banker. Then I left investment banking. And my first big role post-investment banking is this role at Academy Investment Network. I did do a stint at a small fund here in New York City, but this is my first real big role after leaving investment banking. So that's my background. And I've done a lot in medical technology, which is where I focused as an investment banker. I've also, I guess my 4 key areas, I'll say, are medical technology, deep tech, frontier technology like space technology, marketplaces and logistics. I have investments in all 4 of those areas, and I've also advised and assisted companies in all 4 of those areas.
Fantastic. Well, I will ask some follow-up questions on that in a few minutes. But JD, so you are the founder of the Messenger Institute, a transformational leadership school for sharing knowledge, wisdom, and universal laws of success to help the next generation of future leaders. So can you elaborate a little bit more on that, a little bit more on your background and what inspired you to be doing what you're doing today?
Let me take it in the order you asked. The mission of the Messenger Institute is to create authentic, congruent, and bold leaders for new age. It is my belief in the founders of the Messenger Institute that we have to imagine a new way and embrace a new life and embark on a new journey because everything has changed. Now, we launched the Messenger Institute on February 6th of this year after 2 years of work and research. A lot of people thought it was a response to the pandemic or the financial crisis. That's not true, so you might consider it perfect timing or prescient. But we believe very strongly that we need leaders who promote unity and not hatred. We need leaders who inspire hope and not fear. And, we've re-engineered the corporations. We've created business processes. We've invented technological innovations, but we've never re-engineered leadership. And so we need leaders desperately who balance a triple bottom line of people, profits, and planet. We need leaders who can help close the income inequality gap, who can promote environmental sustainability. You know, there is nothing incongruent with making a profit and protecting the air we breathe, the water we drink, and the minerals we consume. So as you can tell, I'm not very passionate about the Messenger Institute. My journey on getting there is a pretty unusual one. I've had a very amazing life, rich in very deep experiences. I was a nuclear submarine officer. I was an Exxon executive. I supervised the Valdez oil spill cleanup in 1989, which made me a crisis expert. So I've been a crisis leader in SARS and 9/11 and Hurricane Harvey and Valdez. And after Exxon, I led the re-engineering and restructuring for the first time. And so I got recruited by Booz Allen and Accenture, at that time Anderson and EY. So I joined EY. I became one of the 4 global energy partners, went to Asia, grew the business from 2 million to 120 million in 30 months. And so I like to say I screwed up because they made me the CEO. And even though we grew the business to, almost $500 million, I wasn't happy. I didn't really like that. And I had a terrible accident. I broke my neck. You know this story. Don't have time to share it all. You can go to jdmessenger.com and watch my story. But I had a near-death experience. I went through the tunnel. I saw spirits. I had flown out of my body. And the long and short story was that I quit the corporate world and I went contemplating my Naval for 10 years. I created and produced it, hosted a show on brainwaves. And it culminated in 12 years later when I launched I wrote a #1 best-selling book, 11 Days in May, and it was my coming out party. I told my story of my metaphysical and spiritual experiences. I was ashamed, I was embarrassed, I thought I would be ridiculed, and of course 100,000 emails later, handwritten letters from the director of the FBI, calls with other people, I hit a nerve that who we are is not what we do. Money does not make us happy. Life is not a destination called retirement at Stop 401k. So after another 10 years of speeches and workshops and courses, I realized I had dozens of programs. And so in 2018, that's when we started designing the Messenger Institute. And our vision, and I'll end it here, our vision is to close the divide in 5-5-5. In other words, in 5 years, we want to recruit 5 million social entrepreneurs and create $50 billion in economic value creation by the end of the decade. So that's $100,000 in economic value creation per entrepreneur. And I can explain more about what that means.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. That's a great summary and just a wonderful mission. So you both have very extensive experience in the entrepreneurial community and both graduates of United States Service Academies. So I wanted to ask, starting with Sherman, what do you believe is the key to being a successful entrepreneur? And in addition to that, what characteristics can veteran founders uniquely bring to the success of a startup?
Got it. It's funny because my initial reaction as a successful entrepreneur was like, well, I've never been an entrepreneur. But then I did start a fund, and I had a really good friend who is a successful entrepreneur said, hey, first time fund, that's entrepreneurial endeavor. I'm in the middle of it. I'm in the thick of it now. And, the only thing I can think of, and JD, please step in, feel free to step in on this, but I think it's just perseverance and resilience. I think it's what we learned in Bancroft Hall, right? It's just you keep pushing. And try to surround that. So your ability to just persevere, don't quit. And then try to surround, I think number 2, try to surround myself with people who are smarter than me, more experienced than me. That's number 2. And actually listen to them, actively listen. And then the third thing that I would think of as far as being a successful entrepreneur, align the organization to one discernible goal / task, or to just a few. So everyone's driving in the same direction. Those are like 3 things that I really think about. And then the second part of your question was, can you remind me again?
Yeah, what specific and unique characteristics can veteran founders contribute to the success of a startup?
Yeah, so I think I think the best thing for that a lot of veterans are able to do is we are able to plan, and we just have experience planning in high and crisis like environments, whether artificial in training or real time like on the deployment. So it's being able to step into an ambiguous situation and break down the elephant one bite at a time and plan, this is time on target, and I'm going to work backwards to figure out when I need to actually do things, or when things need to have occurred, right? So I think that organizational piece is key. Then from a leadership standpoint, I think veterans have the ability to bring in a lot of leadership. The United States military is 1.4 million people, but it's really, tens, if not hundreds of thousands of little small teams. These veterans have the ability to lead in the sense that they can be given a task, they will carry out that task and have extreme ownership over the what they've been made accountable to handle. So that's the thing that I think veterans can bring to the table.
Absolutely, that's fantastic. And kind of a similar question for you, JD. You've had a very successful career. So let me ask you, what skill or skills did you learn in the military that you now know as a veteran that have most contributed to your success?
Well, I break this into two parts, the inner game and the outer game. The inner game is our thoughts and beliefs, and it's all invisible. And the outer game is the physical, physical environment, people, teams, assets, things like that. So in the outer game, I definitely agree with some of the things Sherman was saying, and I think this is what the military taught us, is you have to focus on the target. If you don't know what the target is, you're never going to hit it. So I like to think of it like a homing torpedo. If that torpedo doesn't have a target, it's going to spin around and go around in circles until it depletes its battery, and then it's going to drop to the bottom of the ocean. So the military is fantastic at teaching you focus. And then where are you on the path to hitting the target? And, in the military, it's a matter of survival. You're a team. On the submarine, one person could kill everybody. And so it's very important that you are focused and you are aligned as a team, which is where leadership comes in. Now, I would like to talk about the inner game, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
What I've learned, however, though, is about the inner game. And the inner game, which is your invisible thoughts, beliefs, your passions, it is far more important than the outer game. In other words, nothing of meaningful or lasting change happens on the outside before it happens on the inside. And so the most important qualities, yes, perseverance, determination, willpower, focus, that's all really important. But that is secondary to confidence, courage, and faith.
Absolutely. That's fantastic advice. So I wanted to bring this up, Sherman, because you just kind of briefly touched on it, but we talked about it a lot a couple weeks ago. One of the hardest parts about being an entrepreneur is dealing with unexpected challenges, is dealing with adversity. So can you elaborate a little bit more on how veteran entrepreneurs are uniquely capable of dealing with those challenges? Like you said earlier, bringing structure to that ambiguity?
Yeah, so I don't actually think there's anything really unique about it. It's just that these veterans have been purposefully put into situations in training, and then they were subsequently in those during, they experienced it on deployments where they were put in these situations and they had to rise up, they had to overcome. So it's just pure experience. You're from day one, you're given 26 hours of work in 24 hours time, at the service academies, in boot camp. And then while you're, because you may have to deal with that while on deployment. So it's just experiences. So the veterans have really been put into these situations from the time that they went to MEPS, was Military Entry Processing Station, whatever. from the time they first go to a MEPS. They're put into that environment, and they just veterans just have a lot more experience with that than do their civilian counterparts, and that's been reflected in the performance of veterans with respect to companies. At Academy Investor Network, we wrote a white paper regarding our thesis. It's actually on our website, academyinvestor.com. Shameless plug, and there we have a white paper that looks at the performance. The Small Business Administration looked at the performance of veteran-led companies relative to civilian-led companies with 9 or more employees, from 1 to tens of thousands of employees. Once you hit to 9 or more employees and up, veterans outperformed their civilian counterparts with respect to revenue receipts. I don't believe in secret sauces. I don't believe in magic pills. I believe in hard work, dedication, and a lot of times experiences. And I think that, if you're asking me why I would think that has occurred for veterans, why veterans will do well, and why it happened historically, a la that Small Business Administration study, is simply because of the experiences these folks have had.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a really amazing point. I mean, they have a lot more experience being put into adverse situations with unexpected challenges. So, JD, what you said.
Can I follow up on that though before your question? I don't dispute what you said. However, I think we might be addressing a symptom instead of a root cause. I think one of the things, as I already said, that makes an entrepreneur successful, because 95% fail, is passion. It is your context, it is why. And I believe that with veterans, you're only talking 2-3% of the population. A veteran is somebody who has dedicated their life to serve something bigger than themselves. They are willing to sacrifice their life. I think the reason veterans are more successful because the most successful entrepreneurs realize they are here to serve something bigger than themselves.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
I cannot agree more. That part, definitely, JD.
I love that you brought that up, because I was actually going to just say that what Sherman was saying kind of reminds me a lot of one of the first questions that I asked you. I asked you, over the course of your career, you have interviewed and hired hundreds of people. And so I asked, what is the number one characteristic that you look for when interviewing someone, when hiring them? And you said attitude. You said that when you hire someone, you want someone that is passionate and determined. You want somebody that's ambitious, that's goal-oriented. You said that you don't need someone that, just is good with the CRM that you're using or Excel proficient. You need somebody that wants to be there and has the heart to be there. So I think it's great that you brought up that veterans kind of have that already mission-driven mindset.
Actually, the quote I gave you was from Sam Walton, which I never forgot. And he said, I can teach cashiering, can't teach attitude. And so attitude and initiative are two of the most important things. I mean, look, I have, 6 or 7 world first innovations or productions to my name and teams. And every one of them was done with a group of 4 to 6 people. And, not that, I'll say that, I don't know how to say it, but 4 to 6 average people. They weren't brilliant. They weren't geniuses. They weren't smart. I mean, look at some of the most successful entrepreneurs. They didn't graduate college. It's not book smarts that will determine your success. Of course, you have to have smarts, but, it is attitude and initiative and these qualities that we're talking about that will determine your success in life, no matter what you do.
So I also wanted to bring this up earlier because it was briefly mentioned, but I'd like to go a little bit more in depth about it. We talked about leadership. So Sherman, I wanted to ask you, in your opinion, what makes someone a good leader?
That's really interesting. One of the beautiful things about the military is they've actually studied leadership, probably more so than a lot of other organizations. And it was very much emphasized in my time. You know, they call the academies, I remember Naval Academy, they call it leadership laboratory. And that's what it is. And you know, that leadership in the study was very much emphasized by my commanding officers while I was in the military. So I think leadership, it's all dependent on the context of where, of the organization you're working within. But at its root, for me personally, I believe that leadership is about serving others and putting them in a position to complete a goal, right? So my job as a leader is to put my team in a position that they can quote unquote win. And that's key. And I believe in service-based leadership, where, you know, my job is to, like I said, help out my folks. My folks are not necessarily doing anything for me other than to help me. They may be feeding me information so I can make a decision, but I make sure that they have the ability to gather the information in the way that I want it to be gathered so that I can make said decision. So that's my view of leadership, really service-based leadership.
Absolutely. JD, do you have anything to add to that? What it means to be a good leader?
A leader is a person who has followers, as opposed to a manager who creates and maintains order and control. And a lot of people don't understand that. They call managers good leaders. They're not good leaders at all. They're a good manager. So let's make sure we understand management is maintaining control and order and discipline. Leadership is inspiring others to follow you to achieve an objective. That's like Sherman said. And the best leaders are leaders who marry personal power with institutional power, who are doing so to serve a cause bigger than themselves. Now, going back to situational leadership, look, you can look around the country at all the different governors or senators right now during the crisis, and you will notice that some of them are very good crisis leaders, and some of them were very good steady state leaders who are totally failing in crisis management. So when I say leadership is situational, it's a totally different kind of leader in a crisis versus steady state versus startup versus IPO and so forth. And so recognize there are very few people who may be a great leader across the broad spectrums of situations, which brings you back to another point Sherman made, that a good leader will surround yourself with those people who will help them rise during those different situations.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about the situation of a startup then. Why is it so important for a startup to have a very strong leader?
Startups are crazy. You know, I mean, I think I've probably done 10 or 12, and there is nothing more frenetic and exhausting and exhilarating. It's like, you know, I thought the Navy was hard, and then I joined Exxon. I was like, oh my God, this is harder than the Navy. And then I thought nothing beat hard. I joined Ernst & Young. I was like, oh my God, this is harder than Exxon. And then I became an entrepreneur, and I was like, oh my Lord, this is the hardest thing there is. Now, the one biggest mistake I've seen a lot of entrepreneurs make is they bring their friends on. And, you know, you don't ever ask somebody to do something, or you don't ask their opinion if they don't have any experience. You know, ducks fly and ducks swim, but ducks don't sprint. So don't ask a friend to sprint just because he's a nice duck, you know, and don't, you know, you see where I'm going? And so that's the biggest mistake I see people make, is not having the right multidiscipline, you know, team for the startup.
Sherman, do you have anything to add to that? I know we talked about part of the ability of leadership is the ability to delegate. Can you go a little bit more in depth on why startups need a good leader?
The startup, so, you know, in a startup context, and I've been around startups pretty heavily for Wow, for years now, really for about 10 years, since I got out the military. And the key for me when I look at a small team is everyone bought in. And the best thing about my time in the military and some things, I've done some I've done an ultra marathon, I've run multiple marathons, I fight jujitsu. It's a scary thing, but it's a beautiful thing when someone or a situation is literally trying to drown you. And you're going to be in deep, dark waters, and it's cold, it's dark outside, and you don't know if you're going to make it. And you need to know that the people around you, around that table, are all bought in. No matter what, we're going to figure this out. And we very well may drown. This boat may sink, we may go under, but we're somehow going to figure this out together. Hey, we were supposed to go 2 miles. Guess what? It's 5 miles now. It's 10 miles. All right, look, put on the ruck. It is what it is. Let's keep going, right? And with the startup, you need to, as a leader, you need to ensure and somehow incentivize and inspire all the people around you to be fully bought in. But somehow you need to inspire people through the adversity. But you need to be bought in, and no matter how bad this is, no matter how crazy this is, I am going to figure this out. I'm going to lock in. And as a leader, you need to inspire that amongst your people, and you need to have that set in yourself. And inspiring is key because you cannot do it by yourself. You have to bring these other people along with you to tackle all the various obstacles.
Absolutely. And I think that kind of brings together all the different points that we've talked about with leadership and with attitude. So let's take a minute and kind of shift over a little bit and talk about what impacts that you both hope to have throughout your careers. So JD, you are always an inspiration to me because you're a shoot for the stars kind of person when it comes to the impact that you want to have. So I know you mentioned it a little bit earlier, but could you take a minute to talk about the things that you are really passionate about, the things that you want to achieve in your career?
Well, thanks. That's nice of you to ask that. Listen, I want to say that you might say this sounds crazy. And I love it when people tell me I'm crazy. They told me I was crazy when I said we could create a $100 million business in 2 years. They told me I was crazy when we produced a #1 hit radio show. They told me it was crazy when I invented the world's first multimedia ebook. Crazy is a word people use when they can't even dare to imagine what your vision is. And so I love it when people say it's crazy. So what is my crazy vision? This is my life mission. This is the end game. I'm in Act 3. And that is that we are going to mobilize, recruit, and align 5 million entrepreneurs and help each one of them create $100,000 or more in economic value creation. I call it EVC by the end of the decade. I was sharing this idea with an extremely wealthy person last week, and they didn't bat an eye, like it's just math. If you can do it with 1, you can do it with 10, you could do it with 100, you could do it with 1,000. We're not creating the entrepreneurs, we're providing an infrastructure, a process, a mentoring, funding, and grants and scholarships. So, we're like fertilizing and seeding the future, which is desperately desired by the population.
Absolutely. So Sherman, I'm going to kind of ask the same question of you. What impact do you want to have through AIN, through other aspects of your career?
Yeah, so other than AIN, I make it a point to invest in underrepresented minorities. So African American and Latino founders, women. I've looked at a couple investments and actually assisted a few startups over on the continent of Africa. And my vision is to invest in people that are trying to change the world and make it better. Now, what does that mean? That sounds quite grandiose, I agree. But what does that actually mean? So it's identifying, it's not too differentiated from what Elon Musk says that he did in college, where he identified a few focus areas and said, okay, if I can somehow affect battery technology, if I can somehow get us to, if I can somehow light a fire under NASA, right? If a couple of things, this will improve humanity. Remember, the Mars thing and everything, all of this is a publicity stunt for him to inspire NASA to do the real work. Because he's like, they have more money than me, right? Much more money than I do, right? I can't believe they don't have a vision to go do this. So my vision starting off, right, and then I'll grow from there, at the baseline is I am trying to dramatically increase the amount of veterans that are investing in veterans, okay? So have veterans have a higher participation rate in the VC entrepreneur ecosystem. So there's an entrepreneur ecosystem, and there's the VC entrepreneur ecosystem. Only about 0.05% of companies actually raise venture capital funding, right? So just starting small there. And I'm doing that by developing as many syndicate members as possible. My initial milestone is 250 members. I hope to be in the thousands, several months from now, of entrepreneurs who are academy grads investing in all veterans, irrespective of officer enlisted, ROTC, OCS, doesn't matter, warrant officer, whatever have you, right? So I'm starting off small there in the VC ecosystem. I then want to grow to incorporate other areas of the entrepreneur ecosystem, such as search funds, such as supporting veterans that are trying to start franchises. I want to move into those other asset classes with what I'm doing through AIN. And I also want to, through AIN and Scout Ventures, who is going to be coming out in the press as one of our biggest backers, I want to be a leader in dual use gov tech. So that's space technology, leading areas of robotics. There's really deep and frontier technology that's meant to make a shift humanity, right? And take us to, like type 0 to type 1 to type 2 type civilization over time. I want to be a leader in investing in those companies and helping them achieve their goals. And in my personal goal over time, and I'll lay out a marker, I'll put it out there. I eventually want to have a $1 billion plus AUM that is an early stage fund, a mid stage fund like Series A, Series B, a growth stage fund, and even a debt fund to invest in the entrepreneur ecosystem for veterans. I want to invest in veterans. I also want to invest in underrepresented minorities. That's not just in the United States. That's also on the continent there in Africa, and really moving those technologies forward to improve the human condition. But I'm pleasantly surprised at how invigorated I am about the fact that I'm truly searching for startups that improve the human condition. Our first 2 investments in AIN are doing exactly that. So I am. I think that's kind of where I lie, and that's my stance as far as where I'm trying to go.
Absolutely. And I grew up in a military family, so I have nothing but respect and appreciation for what you're doing. And I think AIN is an amazing organization.
Thank you.
So I would like to finish up with one question for the both of you. And I like to ask this of anyone that I talk to, because I think it's a very insightful question. If you could leave every entrepreneur, every investor, every person that watches this with one piece of advice, what would it be?
I'll go first. That's really easy. Follow your heart. Your heart is never wrong. And it's really that simple. And it's actually a very, very hard thing to do. It is easy to have physical courage, like run into the fire or fight the battle or pick up the gun or whatever. It is very hard to trust your heart and to follow your heart. And we could talk about it for an hour, but that is the most important thing you need to do in your life.
Absolutely. Sherman, do you have anything to add to that?
Yes, it's basically, he used heart. I say passion. It's the exact same thing. It's synonymous. It's figure out, first of all, figure out what your passion is. And no matter what it is, even if it doesn't seem very lucrative now, go with that, stay with that, because someone will find it to be of value at some point. That's number one. And then the second thing is never, ever, ever quit. You don't ever give up, right? And quitting, it becomes a habit. It's habitual, right? You never, ever establish that habit. You never, ever quit.
Absolutely. That is fantastic advice, which I will definitely take to heart. And I think that everyone else watching will as well. JD, Sherman, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me today. And thank you for your service in the United States military. I'm definitely looking forward to seeing all of the additional amazing impact that both of you have on the veteran and entrepreneurial communities.
All right, thanks. It was great to be here. Take care.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.